What Katy Did by Susan Coolidge. Chapter 8. Tomorrow. Tomorrow I will begin, thought Katy as she dropped asleep that night. How often we all do so, and what a pity it is that when morning comes and tomorrow is today, we so frequently wake up feeling quite differently, careless or impatient, and not a bit inclined to do the fine things we planned overnight. Sometimes it seems as if there must be wicked little imps in the world who are kept tied up so long as the sun shines, but who creep into our bedrooms when we are asleep to tease us and ruffle our tempers. Else why, when we got to rest good-natured and pleasant, should we wake up so cross? Now there was Katy. Her last sleepy thought was an intention to be an angel from that time on, and as much like Cousin Helen as she could. And when she opened her eyes, she was all out of sorts and as fractious as a bear. Old Mary said that she got out of bed on the wrong side. I wonder, by the way, if anybody will ever be wise enough to tell us which side that is, so that we may always choose the other. How comfortable it would be if they could. You know how if we begin the day in a cross mood, all sorts of unfortunate accidents seem to occur to add to our vexations. The very first thing Katy did this morning was to break her precious vase, the one Cousin Helen had given her. It was standing on the bureau with a cluster of blush roses in it. The bureau had a swing glass. While Katy was brushing her hair, the glass tipped a little so that she could not see. At a good-humoured moment, this accident wouldn't have troubled her much, but being out of temper to begin with, it made her angry. She gave the glass a violent push. The lower part swung forward. There was a smash, and the first thing Katy knew, the blush roses lay scattered all over the floor, and Cousin Helen's pretty present was ruined. Katy just sat down on the carpet and cried as hard as if she had been Phil himself. Aunt Izzy heard her lamenting and came in. "I'm very sorry," she said, picking up the broken glass, "but it's no more than I expected. You're so careless, Katy. Now don't sit there in that foolish way. Get up and dress yourself. You'll be late for breakfast." "What's the matter?" asked Papa, noticing Katy's red eyes as she took her seat at the table. "I've broken my vase," said Katy dolefully. "It was extremely careless of you to put it in such a dangerous place," said her aunt. "You might have known that the glass would swing and knock it off." Then, seeing a big tear fall in the middle of Katy's plate, she added, "Really, Katy, you're too big to behave like a baby. Why, Dory would be ashamed to do so. Pray control yourself." This snub did not improve Katy's temper. She went on with her breakfast in sulky silence. "What are you all going to do today?" asked Dr. Carr, hoping to give things a more cheerful turn. "Swing," cried John and Dory both together. "Alexander's put us up a splendid one in the woodshed." "No, you're not," said Aunt Izzy in a positive tone. "The swing is not to be used till tomorrow. Remember that, children, not till tomorrow, and not then unless I give you leave." This was unwise of Aunt Izzy. She would have done better to have explained further. The truth was that Alexander, in putting up the swing, had cracked one of the staples which fastened it to the roof. He meant to get a new one in the course of the day, and meantime he had cautioned Miss Carr to let no one use the swing because it really was not safe. If she had told this to the children, all would have been right, but Aunt Izzie's theory was that young people must obey their elders without explanation. John and Elsie and Dory all pouted when they heard this order. Elsie recovered her good humour first. "I don't care," she said, "because I'm going to be very busy. I've got to write a letter to Cousin Helen about something." "What?" asked Clover. "Oh, something," answered Elsie, wagging her head mysteriously. "None of the rest of you must know. Cousin Helen said so. It's a secret she and me has got." "I don't believe Cousin Helen said so at all," said Katy crossly. "She wouldn't tell secrets to a silly little girl like you." "Yes, she would too," retorted Elsie angrily. "She said I was just as good to trust as if I was ever so big, and she said I was her pet. So there, Katy Carr." "Stop disputing," said Aunt Izzie. "Katy, your top drawer is all out of order. I never saw anything look so badly. Go upstairs at once and straighten it before you do anything else. Children, you must keep in the shade this morning. It's too hot for you to be running about in the sun. Elsie, go into the kitchen and tell Debbie I want to speak to her." "Yes," said Elsie in an important tone, "and afterwards I am coming back to write my letter to Cousin Helen." Katy went slowly upstairs, dragging one foot after the other. It was a warm, languid day. Her head ached a little, and her eyes smarted and felt heavy from crying so much. Everything seemed dull and hateful. She said to herself that Aunt Izzie was very unkind to make her work in vacation, and groaned disgustedly. It must be confessed that Aunt Izzie was right. A bureau drawer could hardly look worse than this one did. It reminded one of the White Knight's recipe for a pudding, which began with blotting paper and ended with sealing wax and gunpowder. All sorts of things were mixed together, as if somebody had put in a long stick and stirred them well up. There were books and paint boxes and bits of scribbled paper, and lead pencils and brushes. Stocking legs had come unrolled and twisted themselves about pocket handkerchiefs and ends of ribbon and linen collars. Ruffles all crushed out of shape, stuck up from under the heavier things, and sundry little paper boxes lay empty on top. The treasures they once held having sifted down to the bottom of the drawer and disappeared beneath the general mass. It took much time and patience to bring order out of this confusion, but Katy knew that Aunt Izzie would be up by and by, and she dared not stop till all was done. By the time it was finished, she was very tired. Going downstairs, she met Elsie coming up with a slate in her hand, which as soon as she saw Katy, she put behind her. "You mustn't look," she said. "It's my letter to Cousin Helen. Nobody but me knows the secret. It's all written, and I'm going to send it to the office. See, there's a stamp on it." And she exhibited a corner of the slate. Sure enough, there was a stamp stuck on the frame. "You little goose," said Katy impatiently. "You can't send that to the post office. Here, give me the slate. I'll copy what you've written on paper, and Papa will give you an envelope." "No, no," cried Elsie, struggling. "You mustn't. You'll see what I have said, and Cousin Helen said I wasn't to tell. It's a secret. Let go of my slate, I say. I'll tell Cousin Helen what a mean girl you are, and then she won't love you a bit." "There, then take your old slate," said Katy, giving her a vindictive push. Elsie slipped, screamed, caught at the banisters, missed them, and rolling over and over, fell with a thump on the hall floor. It wasn't much of a fall, only half a dozen steps, but the bump was a hard one, and Elsie roared as if she had been half killed. Aunt Izzy and Mary came rushing to the spot. "Katy pushed me," sobbed Elsie. "She wanted me to tell her my secret. And I wouldn't. She's a bad, naughty girl." "Well, Katy Carr, I should think you'd be ashamed of yourself," said Aunt Izzy, wreaking your temper on your poor little sister. "I think your cousin Helen will be surprised when she hears this. There, Elsie. Don't cry any more, dear. Come upstairs with me. I'll put on some arnica and Katy shan't hurt you again." So they went upstairs. Katy, left below, felt very miserable, repentant, defiant, discontented, and sulky all at once. She knew in her heart that she had not meant to hurt Elsie, and she was thoroughly ashamed of that push. But Aunt Izzy's hint about telling Cousin Helen had made her too angry to allow of her confessing this to herself or anybody else. "I don't care," she murmured, choking back her tears. "Elsie is a real crybaby anyway, and Aunt Izzy always takes her part. Just because I told the little silly not to go and send a great heavy slate to the post office." She went out by the side door into the yard. As she passed the shed, the new swing caught her eye. How exactly like Aunt Izzy, she thought, ordering the children not to swing till she gives them leave. I suppose she thinks it's too hot or something. I shan't mind her anyhow. She seated herself in the swing. It was a first-rate one, with a broad, comfortable seat and thick new ropes. The seat hung just the right distance from the floor. Alexander was a capital hand at putting up swings, and the woodshed the nicest possible spot in which to have one. It was a big place with a very high roof. There was not much wood left in it just now, and the little there was piled neatly about the sides of the shed as to leave plenty of room. The place felt cool and dark, and the motion of the swing seemed to set the breeze blowing. It waved Katy's hair like a great fan and made her dreamy and quiet. All sorts of sleepy ideas began to flit through her brain, swinging to and fro like the pendulum of a great clock. She gradually rose higher and higher, driving herself along by the motion of her body, and striking the floor smartly with her foot at every sweep. Now she was at the top of the high arched door. Then she could almost touch the crossbeam above it, and through the small square window could see pigeons sitting and pluming themselves on the eaves of the barn, and white clouds blowing over the blue sky. She had never swung so high before. It was like flying, she thought, and she bent and curved more strongly in the seat, trying to send herself yet higher and graze the roof with her toes. Suddenly, at the very highest point of the sweep, there was a sharp noise of cracking. The swing gave a violent twist, spun half round, and tossed Katy into the air. She clutched the rope, felt it dragged from her grasp. Then down, down, down she fell. All grew dark, and she knew no more. When she opened her eyes, she was lying on the sofa in the dining room. Clover was kneeling beside her with a pale, scared face, and Aunt Izzy was dropping something cold and wet on her forehead. "What's the matter?" said Katy faintly. "Oh, she's alive, she's alive," and Clover put her arms round Katy's neck and sobbed. "Hush, dear." Aunt Izzy's voice sounded unusually gentle. "You've had a bad tumble, Katy, don't you recollect?" "A tumble? Oh yes, out of the swing," said Katy, as it all came slowly back to her. "Did the rope break, Aunt Izzy? I can't remember about it." "No, Katy, not the rope. The staple drew out of the roof. It was a cracked one and not safe. Don't you recollect my telling you not to swing today? Did you forget?" "No, Aunt Izzy, I didn't forget. But here Katy broke down. She closed her eyes and big tears rolled from under the lids. "Don't cry," whispered Clover, crying herself. "Please don't. Aunt Izzy isn't going to scold you." But Katy was too weak and shaken not to cry. "I think I'd like to go upstairs and lie on the bed," she said. But when she tried to get off the sofa, everything swam before her, and she fell back again on the pillow. "Why, I can't stand up," she gasped, looking very much frightened. "I'm afraid you've given yourself a sprain somewhere," said Aunt Izzy, who looked rather frightened herself. "You'd better lie still a while, dear, before you try to move. Ah, here's the doctor. Well, I am glad." And she went forward to meet him. It wasn't Papa, but Dr. Alsop, who lived quite near them. "I am so relieved that you could come," Aunt Izzy said. "My brother is gone out of town, not to return till tomorrow, and one of the little girls has had a bad fall." Dr. Alsop sat down beside the sofa and counted Katy's pulse. Then he began feeling all over her. "Can you move this leg?" he asked. Katy gave a feeble kick. "And this?" The kick was a good deal more feeble. "Did that hurt you?" asked Dr. Alsop, seeing a look of pain on her face. "Yes, a little," replied Katy, trying hard not to cry. "In your back, eh? Was the pain high up or low down?" And the doctor punched Katy's spine for some minutes, making her squirm uneasily. "I'm afraid she's done some mischief," he said at last, "but it's impossible to tell yet exactly what. It may be only a twist or a slight sprain," he added, seeing a look of terror on Katy's face. "You'd better get her upstairs and undress her as soon as you can, Miss Carr. I'll leave a prescription to rub her with." And Dr. Alsop took out a bit of paper and began to write. "Oh, must I go to bed?" said Katy. "How long will I have to stay there, doctor?" "That depends on how fast you get well," replied the doctor. "Not long, I hope, perhaps only a few days." "A few days?" repeated Katy in a despairing tone. After the doctor was gone, Aunt Izzy and Debbie lifted Katy and carried her slowly upstairs. It was not easy, for every motion hurt her, and the sense of being helpless hurt most of all. She couldn't help crying after she was undressed and put into bed. It all seemed so dreadful and strange. If only Papa was here, she thought. But Dr. Carr had gone into the country to see somebody who was very sick and couldn't possibly be back till tomorrow. Such a long, long afternoon as that was. Aunt Izzy sent up some dinner, but Katy couldn't eat. Her lips were parched and her head ached violently. The sun began to pour in. The room grew warm. Flies buzzed in the window and tormented her by alighting on her face, Little prickles of pain ran up and down her back. She lay with her eyes shut because it hurt to keep them open, and all sorts of uneasy thoughts went rushing through her mind. Perhaps if my back is really sprained, I shall have to lie here as much as a week, she said to herself. Oh dear, dear, I can't. The vacation is only 8 weeks, and I was going to do such lovely things. How can people be so patient as Cousin Helen when they have to lie still? Won't she be sorry when she hears? Was it really yesterday that she went away? It seems a year. If only I hadn't gone into that nasty old swing. And then Katy began to imagine how it would have been if she hadn't, and how she and Clover had meant to go to Paradise that afternoon. They might have been there under the cool trees now. As these thoughts ran through her mind, her head grew hotter and her position in the bed more uncomfortable. Suddenly she became conscious that the glaring light from the window was shaded and that the wind seemed to be blowing freshly over her. She opened her heavy eyes. The blinds were shut, and there beside the bed sat little Elsie, fanning her with a palm leaf fan. "Did I wake you up, Katy?" she asked timidly. Katy looked at her with startled, amazed eyes. "Don't be frightened," said Elsie. "I won't disturb you. Johnny and me are so sorry you're ill," and her little lips trembled. "But we mean to keep quiet and never bang the nursery door or make noises on the stairs till you're all well again. And I've brought you something real nice. Some of it's from John and some from me. It's because you got tumbled out of the swing, see?" And Elsie pointed triumphantly to a chair which she had pulled up close to the bed, and on which were solemnly set forth, first a pewter tea set, second a box with a glass lid on which flowers were painted, third a jointed doll, fourth a transparent slate, and lastly 2 new lead pencils. "They're all yours to keep," said generous little Elsie. "You can have Pickery too if you want. Oh, he's pretty big, and I'm afraid he'd be lonely without me. Don't you like the things, Katy? They're real pretty." It seemed to Katy as if the hottest sort of coal of fire was burning into the top of her head as she looked at the treasures on the chair, and then at Elsie's face, all lighted up with affectionate self-sacrifice. She tried to speak, but began to cry instead, which frightened Elsie very much. "Does it hurt you so bad?" she asked, crying too from sympathy. "Oh no, it isn't that," sobbed Katy. "But I was so cross to you this morning, Elsie, and pushed you. Oh, please forgive me, please do." "Why, it's got well," said Elsie, surprised. "Aunt Izzy put a thing on it out of a bottle, and the bump all went away. Shall I go and ask her to put some on you too? I will." And she ran towards the door. "Oh no," cried Katy, "don't go away, Elsie. Come here and kiss me instead." Elsie turned as if doubtful whether this invitation could be meant for her. Katy held out her arms. Elsie ran right into them, and the big sister and little exchanged an embrace which seemed to bring their hearts closer together than they had ever been before. "You're the most precious little darling," murmured Katy, clasping Elsie tight. "I've been just horrid to you, Elsie, but I'll never be again. You shall play with me and Clover and Cece just as much as you like, and write notes in all the post offices and everything else." "Oh, goody, goody," cried Elsie, executing little skips of transport. "How sweet you are, Katy. I mean to love you next best to Cousin Helen and Papa. And, racking her brains for some way of repaying this wonderful kindness, I'll tell you the secret if you want me to very much. I am sure Cousin Helen would let me." "No," said Katy, "never mind about the secret. I don't want you to tell it to me. Sit down by the bed and fan me some more instead." "No," persisted Elsie, who now that she had made up her mind to part with the treasured secret could not bear to be stopped. "Cousin Helen gave me $50 and told me to give it to Debbie and tell her she was very much obliged to her for making her such nice things to eat, and I did, and Debbie was very pleased. And I wrote Cousin Helen a letter and told her that Debbie liked the $50. That's the secret. Isn't it a nice one? Only you mustn't tell anybody about it, ever. Just as long as you live." "No," said Katy, smiling faintly, "I won't." All the rest of the afternoon, Elsie sat beside the bed with her palm leaf fan, keeping off the flies and shooing away the other children when they peeped in at the door. "Do you really like to have me here?" she asked, more than once, and smiled oh so triumphantly when Katy said yes. But though Katy said yes, I am afraid it was only half the truth, for the sight of the dear little forgiving girl gave her more pain than pleasure. "I'll be so good to her when I get well," she thought to herself, tossing uneasily to and fro. Aunt Izzy slept in her room that night. Katy was feverish. When morning came and Dr. Carr returned, he found her in a good deal of pain, hot and restless, with wide-open, anxious eyes. "Papa," she cried the first thing, "must I lie here as much as a week?" "My darling, I'm afraid you must," replied her father, who looked worried and very grave. "Dear, dear," sobbed Katy, "how can I bear it?" Chapter 9. Dismal Days. If anybody had told Katy that first afternoon that at the end of a week she would still be in bed and in pain and with no time fixed for getting up, I think it would have almost killed her. She was so restless and eager that to lie still seemed one of the hardest things in the world. But to lie still and have her back ache all the time was worse yet. Day after day she asked Papa with quivering lip, "May not I get up and go downstairs this morning?" And when he shook his head, the lip would quiver more and tears would come. But if she tried to get up, it hurt her so much that in spite of herself, she was glad to sink back again on the soft pillows which felt so comfortable to her poor bones. Then there came a time when Katy didn't ever ask to be allowed to get up. A time when sharp, dreadful pain, such as she never imagined before, took hold of her, when days and nights got all confused and tangled up together, and Aunt Izzy never seemed to go to bed. A time when Papa was constantly in her room, when other doctors came and stood over her and talked to each other in low whispers. It was all like a long, bad dream from which she couldn't wake up, though she tried ever so hard. Now and then she would rouse a little and catch the sound of voices, or be aware that Clover or Elsie stood at the door crying softly, or that Aunt Izzy, in creaking slippers, was going about the room on tiptoe. Then all these things would slip away again, and she would drop off into a dark place, where there was nothing but pain and sleep, which made her forget pain and so seemed the best thing in the world. We will hurry over this time, for it is hard to think of our bright Katy in such a sad plight. By and by, the pain grew less, and the sleep quieter. Then as the pain became easier still, Katy woke up, as it were, began to take notice of what was going on about her, to put questions. "How long have I been ill?" she asked one morning. "It is 4 weeks yesterday," replied Papa. 4 weeks, said Katy. "Why, I didn't know it was so long as that. Was I very ill, Papa?" "Very, dear, but you're a great deal better now." "How did I hurt myself when I tumbled out of the swing?" asked Katy, who was in an unusually wakeful mood. "I don't believe I could make you understand, dear. But try, Papa." "Well, did you know that you had a long bone down your back called a spine?" "I thought that was a disease," said Katy. "Clover said that Cousin Ellen had the spine." "No, the spine is a bone. It is made up of a row of smaller bones, or knobs. And in the middle of it is a sort of rope of nerves called the spinal cord. Nerves, you know, are the things we feel with. Well, this spinal cord is rolled up for safekeeping in a soft wrapping called membrane. When you fell out of the swing, you struck against one of these knobs and bruised the membrane inside, and the nerve inflamed and gave you a fever in the back. Do you see?" "A little," said Katy, not quite understanding, but too tired to question further. After she had rested a while, she said, "Is the fever well now, Papa? Can I get up again and go downstairs yet?" "Not yet, I'm afraid," said Dr. Carr, trying to speak cheerfully. Katy didn't ask any more questions then. Another week passed, and another. The pain was almost gone. It only came back now and then for a few minutes. She could sleep now and eat, and be raised in bed without feeling giddy, but still the once active limbs hung heavy and lifeless, and she was not able to walk or even stand alone. "My legs feel so queer," she said one morning. "They are just like the prince's legs, which were turned to black marble in the Arabian Nights. What do you suppose is the reason, Papa? Won't they feel natural soon?" "Not soon," answered Dr. Carr. Then he said to himself, "Poor child, she had better know the truth." So he went on aloud, "I am afraid, my darling, that you must make up your mind to stay in bed a long time." "How long?" said Katy, looking frightened. "A month more?" "I can't tell exactly how long," answered her father. "The doctors think, as I do, that the injury to your spine is one which you will outgrow by and by, because you are so young and strong, but it may take a good while to do it. It may be that you'll have to lie here for months, or it may be more. The only cure for such a hurt is time and patience. It is hard, darling," for Katy began to sob wildly, "but you have hope to help you along. Think of poor Cousin Helen bearing all these years without hope." "Oh, Papa," gasped Katy between her sobs. "Doesn't it seem dreadful that just getting into the swing for a few minutes should do so much harm, such a little thing as that?" "Yes, such a little thing," repeated Dr. Carr sadly. "And it was only a little thing too, forgetting Aunt Izzie's order about the swing, just for the want of the small horseshoe nail of obedience." Years afterwards, Katy told somebody that the 6 longest weeks of her life were those which followed this conversation with Papa. Now that she knew there was no chance of getting well at once, the days dragged dreadfully. Each seemed duller and dismaler than the day before. she lost heart about herself and took no interest in anything. Aunt Izzy brought her books, but she didn't want to read or to sew. Nothing amused her. Clover and Cece would come to sit with her, but hearing them tell about their plays and the things they had been doing made her cry so miserably that Aunt Izzy wouldn't let them come too often. They were very sorry for Katy, but the room was so gloomy and Katy so cross that they didn't mind much not being allowed to see her. In those days, Katy made Aunt Izzy keep the blinds shut tight, and she lay in the dark thinking how miserable she was and how wretched all the rest of her life was going to be. Everybody was very kind and patient with her, but she was too selfishly miserable to notice it. Aunt Izzy ran up and down stairs and was on her feet all day trying to get something which would please her, but Katy hardly said thank you and never saw how tired Aunt Izzy looked. So long as she was forced to stay in bed, Katy could not be grateful for anything that was done for her. But doleful as the days were, they were not so bad as the nights, when after Aunt Izzy was asleep, Katy would lie wide awake and have long, hopeless fits of crying. At these times she would think of all the plans she had made for doing beautiful things when she was grown up. And now I shall never do any of them, she would say to herself. Only just lie here. Papa says I may get well by and by, but I shan't, I know I shan't. And even if I do, I shall have wasted all these years, and the others will grow up and get ahead of me, and I shan't be a comfort to them or to anybody else. Oh dear, how dreadful it is. The first thing which broke in upon this sad state of affairs was a letter from Cousin Helen, which Papa brought one morning and handed to Aunt Izzy. Helen tells me she is going home this week, said Aunt Izzy from the window where she had gone to read the letter. Well, I'm sorry, but I think she's quite right not to stop. It's just as she says. One invalid at a time is enough in a house. Oh, Aunt Izzy, cried Katy, is Cousin Helen coming this way when she goes home? Oh, do make her stop. If it's just for one day, do ask her. I want to see her so much. I can't tell you how much. Won't you? Please, please, dear Papa. She was almost crying with eagerness. Why, yes, darling, if you wish it so much, said Dr. Carr. It will cost Aunt Izzy some trouble, but she's so kind that I'm sure she'll manage it, if it is to give you so much pleasure. Can't you, Izzy? And he looked eagerly at his sister. Of course I will, said Miss Izzy heartily. Katy was so glad that for the first time in her life she threw her arms of her own accord round Aunt Izzy's neck and kissed her. Thank you, dear Auntie, she said. Aunt Izzy looked as pleased as could be. She had a warm heart hidden under her fidgety ways, only Katy had never been ill before to find it out. For the next week Katy was feverish with expectation. At last Cousin Helen came. This time Katy was not on the steps to welcome her, but after a little while Papa brought Cousin Helen in his arms and sat her in a big chair beside the bed. How dark it is, she said, after they had kissed each other and talked for a minute or two. I can't see your face at all. Would it hurt your eyes to have a little more light? Oh, no, answered Katy. It doesn't hurt my eyes. Only I hate to have the sun come in. It makes me feel worse somehow. Push the blinds open a little bit then, Clover. And Clover did so. Now I can see, said Cousin Helen. It was a forlorn-looking child enough which she saw lying before her. Katy's face had grown thin, and her eyes had red circles about them from continual crying. Her hair had been brushed twice that morning by Aunt Izzy, but Katy had run her fingers impatiently through it, till it stood out above her head like a frowsy bush. She wore a calico dressing gown, which, though clean, was particularly ugly in pattern, and the room, for all its tidiness, had a dismal look, with the chair set up against the wall and a row of medicine bottles on the chimney piece. "Isn't it horrid?" sighed Katy as Cousin Helen looked around. "Everything's horrid, but I don't mind so much now that you've come. Oh, Cousin Helen, I've had such a dreadful, dreadful time." "I know," said her cousin pityingly. "I've heard all about it, Katy, and I'm so very sorry for you. It is a hard trial, my poor darling." "But how do you do it?" cried Katy. "How do you manage to be so sweet and beautiful and patient when you're feeling badly all the time and can't do anything, or walk or stand?" Her voice was lost in sobs. Cousin Helen didn't say anything for a little while. She just sat and stroked Katy's hand. "Katy," she said at last, "has Papa told you that he thinks you're going to get well by and by?" "Yes," replied Katy, "he did say so, but perhaps it won't be for a long, long time. And I wanted to do so many things, and now I can't do anything at all." "What sort of things?" "Study and help people and become famous, and I wanted to teach the children. Mamma said I must take care of them, and I meant to. And now I can't go to school or learn anything myself. And if I ever do get well, the children will be almost grown up, and they won't need me." "But why must you wait till you get well?" asked Cousin Helen, smiling. "Why, Cousin Helen, what can I do lying here in bed?" "A good deal. Shall I tell you, Katy, what it seems to me that I should say to myself if I were in your place?" "Yes, please," replied Katy, wonderingly. "I should say this: Now, Katy Carr, you wanted to go to school and learn to be wise and useful, and here's a chance for you. God is going to let you go to his school, where he teaches all sorts of beautiful things to people. Perhaps he will only keep you for 1 term, or perhaps it may be for 3 or 4, but whichever it is, you must make the very most of the chance, because he gives it to you himself." "But what is the school?" asked Katy. "I don't know what you mean." "It is called the School of Pain," replied Cousin Helen, with her sweetest smile. "And the place where the lessons are to be learned is this room of yours. The rules of the school are pretty hard, but the good scholars, who keep them best, find out after a while how right and kind they are, and the lessons aren't easy either. But the more you study, the more interesting they become." "What are the lessons?" asked Katy, getting interested and beginning to feel as if Cousin Helen were telling her a story. "Well, there's the lesson of patience. That's one of the hardest studies. You can't learn much of it at a time, but every bit you get by heart makes the next bit easier. And there's the lesson of cheerfulness and the lesson of making the best of things." "Sometimes there isn't anything to make the best of," remarked Katy dolefully. "Yes, there is always. Everything in the world has 2 handles. Didn't you know that? One is a smooth handle. If you take hold of it, the thing comes up lightly and easily. But if you seize the rough handle, it hurts your hand and the thing is hard to lift. Some people always manage to get hold of the wrong handle." "Is Aunt Izzy a thing?" asked Katy. Cousin Helen was glad to hear her laugh. "Yes, Aunt Izzy is a thing, and she has a nice pleasant handle too, if you just try to find it. And the children are things also, in one sense. All their handles are different. You know, human beings aren't made just alike, like red flower pots. We have to feel and guess before we can make out just how other people go and how we ought to take hold of them. It is very interesting. I advise you to try it. And while you are trying, you will learn all sorts of things which will help you to help others." "If I only could," sighed Katy. "Are there any other studies in the school, Cousin Helen?" "Yes, there's the lesson of hopefulness. That class has ever so many teachers. The son is one. He sits outside the window all day, waiting a chance to slip in and get at his pupil. He's a first-rate teacher too. I wouldn't shut him out if I were you. Every morning, the first thing when I woke up, I would say to myself, 'I'm going to get well, so Papa thinks. Perhaps it may be tomorrow. So, in case this should be the last day of my sickness, let me spend it beautifully and make my sick room so pleasant that everybody will like to remember it.' Then there is one more lesson, Katy, the lesson of neatness. Schoolrooms must be kept in order, you know. A sick person ought to be as fresh and dainty as a rose." "But it is such a fuss," pleaded Katy. "I don't believe you've any idea what a bother it is to be always nice and in order. You never were careless like me, Cousin Helen. You were born neat." "Oh, was I?" said her cousin. "Well, Katy, we won't dispute that point, but I'll tell you a story if you like, about a girl I once knew who wasn't born neat." "Oh, do," cried Katy, enchanted. Cousin Helen had done her good already. She looked brighter and less listless than for days. "This girl was quite young," continued Cousin Helen. "She was strong and active and liked to run and climb and ride and do all sorts of jolly things. One day something happened, an accident, and they told her that all the rest of her life she had got to lie on her back and suffer pain and never walk any more or do any of the things she enjoyed most." "Just like you and me," whispered Katy, squeezing Cousin Helen's hand. "Something like me, but not so much like you, because you know we hope you are going to get well one of these days." The girl didn't mind it so much when they first told her, for she was so ill that she felt sure she should die. But when she got better and began to think of the long life which lay before her, that was worse than ever the pain had been. She was so wretched that she didn't care what became of anything or how anything looked. She had no Aunt Izzy to look after things, so her room soon got into a dreadful state. It was full of dust and confusion, and dirty spoons and phials of physic. She kept the blinds shut and let her hair tangle in any way, and altogether was a dismal spectacle. "This girl had a dear old father," went on Cousin Helen, "who used to come every day and sit beside her bed. One morning he said to her, 'My daughter, I'm afraid you've got to live in this room for a long time. Now there's one thing I want you to do for my sake.' 'What is that?' she asked, surprised to hear there was anything left which she could do for anybody. 'I want you to turn out all these physic bottles and make your room pleasant and pretty for me to come and sit in. You see, I shall spend a good deal of my time here. Now I don't like dust and darkness. I like to see flowers on the table and sunshine in at the window. Will you do this to please me?' 'Yes,' said the girl, but she gave a sigh, and I'm afraid she felt as if it was going to be a dreadful trouble. Then another thing, continued her father. I want you to look pretty. Can't nightgowns and wrappers be trimmed and made becoming just as much as dresses? Do, to please me, send for something pretty, and let me see you looking nice again. I can't bear to have my Helen turn into a slattern. Helen, exclaimed Katy with wide open eyes. Was it you? Yes, said her cousin, smiling. It was I, though I didn't mean to let the name slip out so soon. So after my father was gone away, I sent for a looking-glass. Such a sight, Katy. My hair was a perfect mouse's nest, and I had frowned so much that my forehead was all crisscrossed with lines of pain, till it looked like an old woman's. Katy stared at Cousin Helen's smooth brow and glossy hair. I can't believe it, she said. Your hair never could be rough. Yes, it was. Worse a great deal than yours looks now. But that peep in the glass did me good. I began to think how selfishly I was behaving, and to desire to do better, and after that, when the pain came on, I used to lie and keep my forehead smooth with my fingers, and try not to let my face show what I was enduring, so by and by the wrinkles wore away, and though I'm a good deal older now, they have never come back. It was a great deal of trouble at first to have to think and plan to keep my room and myself looking nice. But after a while it grew to be a habit, and then it became easy. And the pleasure it gave my dear father repaid for all. He had been proud of his active, healthy girl, but I think she was never such a comfort to him as his sick one, lying there in her bed. My room was his favourite sitting place, and he spent so much time there that now the room and everything in it makes me think of him. There were tears in Cousin Helen's eyes as she ceased speaking, but Katy looked bright and eager. It seemed somehow to be a help, as well as a great surprise, that ever there should have been a time when Cousin Helen was less perfect than she was now. Do you really think I could do so too? She asked. Do what? Comb your hair? Cousin Helen was smiling now. Oh no, be nice and sweet and patient, and a comfort to people. You know what I mean. I'm sure you can if you try. But what would you do first? Asked Katy, who now that her mind had grasped a new idea was eager to begin. Well, first I would open the blinds and make the room look a little less dismal. Are you taking all those medicines in the bottles now? No, only the big one with the blue label. Then you might ask Aunt Izzy to take away the others, and I'll get Clover to pick a bunch of fresh flowers every day for your table. By the way, I don't see the little white vase. No, it got broken the very day after you went away, the day I fell out of the swing, said Katy sorrowfully. Never mind, pet, don't look so doleful. I know the tree those vases grow upon, and you shall have another. Then after the room is made pleasant, I would have all my lesson books fetched up if I were you, and I would study a couple of hours every morning. Oh, cried Katy, making a wry face at the idea. Cousin Helen smiled. I know, she said. It sounds like dull work, learning geography and doing sums here all by yourself. But I think if you make the effort, you'll be glad by and by. You won't lose so much ground, you see, won't slip back quite so far in your education. And then studying will be like working at a garden where things don't grow easily. Every flower you raise will be a sort of triumph, and you will value it twice as much as a common flower which has cost no trouble. Well, said Katy, rather forlornly, I'll try. but it won't be a bit nice studying without anybody to study with me. Is there anything else, Cousin Helen?" Just then the door creaked, and Elsie timidly put her head into the room. "Oh, Elsie, run away," cried Katy. "Cousin Helen and I are talking. Don't come just now." Katy didn't speak unkindly, but Elsie's face fell, and she looked disappointed. She said nothing, however, but shut the door and stole away. Cousin Helen watched this little scene without speaking. For a few minutes after Elsie was gone, she seemed to be thinking. "Katy," she said at last, "you were saying just now that one of the things you were sorry about was that while you were ill, you could be of no use to the children. Do you know, I don't think you have that reason for being sorry." "Why not?" said Katy, astonished. "Because you can be of use. It seems to me that you have more of a chance with the children now than you ever could have had when you were well and flying about as you used. You might do almost anything you liked with them." "I can't think what you mean," said Katy sadly. "Why, Cousin Helen, half the time I don't even know where they are or what they are doing, and I can't get up and go after them, you know. But you can make your room such a delightful place that they will want to come here to you. Don't you see? A sick person has one splendid chance. She is always on hand. Everybody who wants her knows just where to go. If people love her, she gets to naturally be the heart of the house. Make the little ones feel that your room is the place of all others to come to when they are tired or happy or grieved or sorry about anything, and that the Katy who lives there is sure to give them a loving reception. And the battle is won, for you know we never do people good by lecturing, only by living their lives with them and helping a little here and a little there to make them better. And when one's own life is laid aside for a while, as yours is now, that is the very time to take up other people's lives, as we can't do when we are scurrying and bustling over our own affairs. But I didn't mean to preach a sermon. I'm afraid you're tired." "No, not a bit," said Katy, holding Cousin Helen's hand tight in hers. "You can't think how much better I feel. Oh, Cousin Helen, I will try." "It won't be easy," replied her cousin. "There will be days when your head aches and you feel cross and fretted and don't want to think of anyone but yourself. And there'll be other days when Clover and the rest will come in, as Elsie did just now, and you will be doing something else and will feel as if their coming was a bother. But you must recollect that every time you forget and are impatient or selfish, you chill them and drive them further away. They are loving little things and are so sorry for you now that nothing you do makes them angry. But by and by they will get used to having you sick, and if you haven't won them as friends, they will grow away from you as they get older." Just then Dr. Carr came in. "Oh, Papa, you haven't come to take Cousin Helen, have you?" cried Katy. "Indeed I have," said her father. "I think the big invalid and the little invalid have talked quite long enough. Cousin Helen looks tired." For a minute Katy felt just like crying, but she choked back the tears. "My first lesson in patience," she said to herself, and managed to give a faint watery smile as Papa looked at her. "That's right, dear," whispered Cousin Helen as she bent forward to kiss her. "And one last word, Katy. In this school to which you and I belong, there is one great comfort, and that is that the teacher is always at hand. He never goes away. If things puzzle us, there he is, close by, ready to explain and make all easy. Try to think of this, darling, and don't be afraid to ask him for help if the lesson seems too hard." Katy had a strange dream that night. She thought she was trying to study a lesson out of a book, which wouldn't come quite open. She could just see a little bit of what was inside, but it was in a language which she did not understand. She tried in vain. Not a word could she read, and yet for all that, it looked so interesting that she longed to go on. Oh, if somebody would only help me, she cried impatiently. Suddenly a hand came over her shoulder and took hold of the book. It opened at once and showed the whole page, and then the forefinger of the hand began to point to line after line. And as it moved, the words became plain, and Katy could read them easily. She looked up. There, stooping over her, was a great, beautiful face. The eyes met hers. The lips smiled. "Why didn't you ask me before, little scholar?" said a voice. "Why, it is you, just as Cousin Helen told me," cried Katy. She must have spoken in her sleep, for Aunt Izzy half woke up and said, "What is it? Do you want anything?" The dream broke, and Katy roused to find herself in bed, with the first sunbeams struggling in at the window, and Aunt Izzy raised on her elbow, looking at her with a sort of sleepy wonder. Chapter 10. St. Nicholas and St. Valentine. "What are the children all doing today?" said Katy, laying down Norway and the Norwegians, which she was reading for the 4th time. "I haven't seen them since breakfast." Aunt Izzy, who was sewing on the other side of the room, looked up from her work. "I don't know," she said. "They're over at Cece's or somewhere. They'll be back before long, I guess." Her voice sounded a little odd and mysterious, but Katy didn't notice it. "I thought of such a nice plan yesterday," she went on. "It was that all of them should hang their stockings up here tomorrow night, instead of in the nursery. Then I could see them open their presents, you know. May they, Aunt Izzy? It would be great fun." "I don't think there will be any objection," replied her aunt. She looked as if she were trying not to laugh. Katy wondered what was the matter with her. It was more than 2 months now since Cousin Helen went away, and winter had fairly come. Snow was falling outdoors. Katy could see the thick flakes go whirling past the window, but the sight did not chill her. It only made the room look warmer and more cosy. It was a pleasant room now. There was a bright fire in the grate. Everything was neat and orderly. The air was sweet with mignonette from a little glass of flowers which stood on the table. And the Katy who lay in bed was a very different looking Katy from the forlorn girl of the last chapter. Cousin Helen's visit, though it lasted only 1 day, did great good. Not that Katy grew perfect all at once. None of us do that, even in books. But it is everything to be started in the right path. Katy's feet were on it now, and though she often stumbled and slipped, and often sat down discouraged, she kept on pretty steadily, in spite of bad days, which made her say to herself that she was not getting forward at all. These bad days, when everything seemed hard, and she herself was cross and fretful, and drove the children out of her room, cost Katy many bitter tears. But after them she would pick herself up and try again, and harder. And I think that in spite of drawbacks, the little scholar, on the whole, was learning her lesson pretty well. Cousin Helen was a great comfort all this time. She never forgot Katy. Nearly every week, some little thing came from her. Sometimes it was a pencil note written from her sofa. Sometimes it was an interesting book, or a new magazine, or some pretty little thing for the room. The crimson wrapper which Katy wore was one of her presents. So were the bright chromos of autumn leaves, which hung on the wall, the little stand for the books, all sorts of things. Katy loved to look about her as she lay. All the room seemed full of Cousin Helen and her kindness. "I wish I had something pretty to put into everybody's stocking," she went on wistfully, "but I've only got the muffetees for Papa, and these reins for Phil." She took them from under her pillow as she spoke. Gay worsted affairs, with bells sewed on here and there. She had knit them herself, a very little bit at a time. "There's my pink sash," she said suddenly. "I might give that to Clover. I only wore it once, you know, and I don't think I got any spots on it. Would you please fetch it and let me see, Aunt Izzy? It's in the top drawer." Aunt Izzy brought the sash. It proved to be quite fresh, and they both decided that it would do nicely for Clover. "You know I shan't want sashes for ever so long," said Katy, in rather a sad tone, "and this is a beauty." When she spoke next, her voice was bright again. "I wish I had something very nice for Elsie. Do you know, Aunt Izzy, I think Elsie is the dearest little girl that ever was." "I'm glad you found it out," said Aunt Izzy, who had always been especially fond of Elsie. "What she wants most of all is a writing desk," continued Katy, "and Johnny wants a sled. But oh dear, those are such big things, and I've only got $2.25. Aunt Izzy marched out of the room without saying anything. When she came back, she had something folded up in her hand. "I didn't know what to give you for Christmas, Katy," she said, "because Helen sends you such a lot of things, and there does not seem to be anything you haven't got already. So I thought I'd give you this and let you choose for yourself. But if you've set your heart on getting presents for the children, perhaps you'd rather have it now." So saying, Aunt Izzy laid on the bed a crisp new $5 note. "How good you are!" cried Katy, flushed with pleasure. And indeed, Aunt Izzy did seem to have grown wonderfully good of late. Perhaps Katy had got hold of her smooth handle. Being now in possession of $7.25, Katy could afford to be gorgeously generous. She gave Aunt Izzy an exact description of the desk she wanted. "It's no matter about it being very big," said Katy, "but it must have a blue velvet lining and an inkstand with a silver top. And please buy some little sheets of paper and envelopes, and a pen handle, the prettiest you can find. Oh, and there must be a lock and key. Don't forget that, Aunt Izzy." "No, I won't. What else?" "I'd like the sled to be green," went on Katy, "and to have a nice name. Skyscraper would be nice, if there was one. Johnny saw a sled once called Skyscraper, and she said it was splendid. And if there's money enough left, Auntie, won't you buy me a nice book for Dory, and another for Cece, and a silver thimble for Mary? Her old one is full of holes. Oh, and some candy, and something for Debbie and Bridget, some little thing, you know. I think that's all." Was ever $7.25 expected to do so much? Aunt Izzy must have been a witch indeed to make it hold out. But she did, and the next day all the precious bundles came home. How Katy enjoyed untying the strings. Everything was exactly right. "There wasn't any skyscraper," said Aunt Izzy, "so I got snow skimmer instead." "It's beautiful, and I like it just as well," said Katy contentedly. "Oh, hide them," she cried with sudden terror. "Somebody's coming." But the somebody was only Papa, who put his head into the room as Aunt Izzy, laden with bundles, scuttled across the hall. Katy was glad to catch him alone. She had a little private secret to talk over with him. It was about Aunt Izzy, for whom she as yet had no present. "I thought perhaps you'd get me a book, like that one of Cousin Helen's, which Aunt Izzy liked so much," she said. "I don't recollect the name exactly. It was something about a shadow, but I've spent all my money." "Never mind about that," said Dr. Carr. "We'll make that right. The Shadow of the Cross, was that it? I'll buy it this afternoon." "Oh, thank you, Papa. And please get a brown cover if you can, because Cousin Helen's was brown. And you won't let Aunt Izzy know, will you? Be careful, Papa." "I'll swallow the book first, brown cover and all," said Papa, making a funny face. He was pleased to see Katy so interested about anything again. These delightful secrets took up so much of her thoughts that Katy scarcely found time to wonder at the absence of the children, who generally haunted her room, but who for 3 days back had hardly been seen. However, after supper, they all came up in a body, looking very merry, and as if they had been having a good time somewhere. "You don't know what we've been doing," began Philly. "Hush, Phil," said Clover in a warning voice. Then she divided the stockings which she held in her hand, and everybody proceeded to hang them up. Dory hung his on one side of the fireplace, and John hers exactly opposite. Clover and Phil suspended theirs side by side on 2 handles of the bureau. "I'm going to put mine here close to Katy, so that she can see it first thing in the morning," said Elsie, pinning hers to the bedpost. Then they all sat down round the fire to write their wishes on bits of paper and see whether they would burn or fly up the chimney. If they did the latter, it was a sign that Santa Claus had them safe and would bring the things wished for. John wished for a sled and a doll's tea set, and the continuation of the Swiss Family Robinson. Dory's list ran thus: a plum cake, a new Bible, Harry and Lucy, a kaleidoscope, everything else Santa Claus likes. When they had written these lists, they threw them into the fire. The fire gave a flicker just then, and the papers vanished. Nobody saw exactly how. John thought they flew up the chimney, but Dory said they didn't. Phil dropped his piece in very solemnly. It flamed for a minute, then sank into ashes. "There, you won't get it, whatever it was," said Dory. "What did you write, Phil?" "Nothing," said Phil, "only just Philly Carr." The children shouted. "I wrote a writing desk on mine," remarked Elsie sorrowfully, "but it all burned up." Katy chuckled when she heard this. And now Clover produced her list. She read aloud: "Strive and thrive, a pair of kid gloves, a muff and a good temper." Then she dropped it into the fire. Behold, it flew straight up the chimney. "How queer," said Katy. "None of the rest of them did that." The truth was that Clover, who was a queer little mortal, had slipped across the room and opened the door just before putting her wishes in. This, of course, made a draft and sent the paper right upward. Pretty soon Aunt Izzy came in and swept them all off to bed. "I know how it will be in the morning," she said. "You'll all be up and racing about as soon as it is light, so you must get your sleep now, if ever." After they had gone, Katy recollected that nobody had offered to hang a stocking up for her. She felt a little hurt when she thought of it. "But I suppose they forgot," she said to herself. A little later, Papa and Aunt Izzy came in, and they filled the stockings. It was great fun. Each was brought to Katy as she lay in bed, that she might arrange it as she liked. The toes were stuffed with candy and oranges. Then came the parcels, all shapes and sizes, tied in white paper with ribbons and labelled. "What's that?" asked Dr. Carr as Aunt Izzy rammed a long, narrow package into Clover's stocking. "A nail brush," answered Aunt Izzy. Clover needed a new one. How Papa and Katy laughed. "I don't believe Santa Claus ever had such a thing before," said Dr. Carr. "He's a very dirty old gentleman then," observed Aunt Izzy grimly. The desk and sled were too big to go into any stocking, so they were wrapped in paper and hung beneath the other things. It was 10 o'clock before all was done, and Papa and Aunt Izzy went away. Katy lay a long time watching the queer shapes of the stocking legs as they dangled in the firelight. Then she fell asleep. It seemed only a minute before something touched her and woke her up. Behold, it was daytime, and there was Philly in his nightgown, climbing up on the bed to kiss her. The rest of the children, half dressed, were dancing about with their stockings in their hands. "Merry Christmas, Merry Christmas," they cried. "Oh, Katy, such beautiful, beautiful things." "Oh," shrieked Elsie, who at that moment spied her desk. "Santa Claus did bring it after all. Why, it's got 'From Katy' written on it. Oh, Katy, it's so sweet and I'm so happy." And Elsie hugged Katy and sobbed for pleasure. But what was that strange thing beside the bed? Katy stared and rubbed her eyes. It certainly had not been there when she went to sleep. How had it come? It was a little evergreen tree, planted in a red flower pot. The pot had stripes of gilt paper stuck on it, and gilt stars and crosses, which made it look very gay. The boughs of the tree were hung with oranges and nuts, and shiny red apples and popcorn balls, and strings of bright berries. There were also a number of little packages tied with blue and crimson ribbon, and altogether the tree looked so pretty that Katy gave a cry of delighted surprise. "It's a Christmas tree for you, because you're ill, you know," said the children, all trying to hug her at once. "We made it ourselves," said Dory, hopping about on one foot. "I pasted the black stars on the pot." "And I popped the corn," cried Philly. "Do you like it?" asked Elsie, cuddling close to Katy. "That's my present, the one tied with a green ribbon. I wish it was nicer. Don't you want to open them at once?" Of course Katy wanted to. All sorts of things came out of the little bundles. The children had arranged every parcel themselves. No grown person had been allowed to help in the least. Elsie's present was a pen wiper with a grey flannel kitten on it. Johnny's a doll's tea tray of scarlet tin. "Isn't it beautiful?" she said admiringly. Dory's gift, I regret to say, was a huge red and yellow spider, which whirred wildly when waved at the end of its string. "They didn't want me to buy it," said he, "but I did. I thought it would amuse you. Does it amuse you, Katy?" "Yes, indeed," said Katy, laughing and blinking as Dory waved the spider to and fro before her eyes. "You can play with it when we are not here and you're all alone, you know," remarked Dory, highly gratified. "But you don't notice what the tree's standing upon," said Clover. It was a chair, a very large and curious one, with a long cushioned back which ended in a footstool. "That's Papa's present," said Clover. "See, it tips back so as to be just like a bed, and Papa says he thinks pretty soon you can lie on it in the window where you can see us play." "Does he really?" said Katy doubtfully. It still hurt her very much to be touched or moved. "And see what's tied to the arm of the chair," said Elsie. It was a little silver bell with Katy engraved on the handle. "Cousin Helen sent it. It's for you to ring when you want anybody to come," explained Elsie. More surprises. To the other arm of the chair was fastened a beautiful book. It was The Wide, Wide World. And there was Katy's name written on it, from her affectionate Cece. On it stood a great parcel of dried cherries from Mrs. Hall. Mrs. Hall had the most delicious dried cherries, the children thought. "How perfectly lovely everybody is," said Katy, with grateful tears in her eyes. That was a pleasant Christmas. The children declared it to be the nicest they had ever had, and though Katy couldn't quite say that, she enjoyed it too and was very happy. It was several weeks before she was able to use the chair, but when once she became accustomed to it, it proved very comfortable. Aunt Izzy would dress her in the morning, tip the chair back till it was on a level with the bed, and then very gently and gradually draw her over onto it. Wheeling across the room was always painful, but sitting in the window and looking out at the clouds, the people going by, and the children playing in the snow was delightful. How delightful nobody knows, excepting those who, like Katy, have lain for 6 months in bed without a peep at the outside world. Every day she grew brighter and more cheerful. "How jolly Santa Claus was this year," she happened to say one day when she was talking with Cece. "I wish another saint would come and pay us a visit, but I don't know any more except Cousin Helen, and she can't." "There's St. Valentine," suggested Cece. "Sure enough, what a bright thought," cried Katy, clapping her hands. "Oh, Cece, let's do something funny on Valentine's Day. Such a good idea has just popped into my mind." So the two girls put their heads together and held a long, mysterious confabulation. What it was about, we shall see further on. Valentine's Day was the next Friday. When the children came home from school on Thursday afternoon, Aunt Izzy met them and, to their great surprise, told them that Cece had come to drink tea and they must all go upstairs and be made nice. "But Cece comes most every day," remarked Dory, who didn't see the connection between this fact and having his face washed. "Yes, but tonight you were to take tea in Katy's room," said Aunt Izzy. "Here are the invitations, one for each of you. Sure enough, there was a neat little note for each, requesting the pleasure of their company at Queen Catherine's palace that afternoon at 6 o'clock. This put quite a different aspect on the affair. The children scampered upstairs, and pretty soon, all nicely brushed and washed, they were knocking formally at the door of the palace. How fine it sounded! The room looked bright and inviting. Katy, in her chair, sat close to the fire, Cece beside her, and there was a round table all set out with a white cloth and mugs of milk and biscuit and strawberry jam and doughnuts. In the middle was a loaf of frosted cake. There was something on the icing which looked like pink letters, and Clover, leaning forward, read aloud, "Saint Valentine." "What's that for?" asked Dory. "Why, you know, this is St. Valentine's Eve," replied Katy. Debbie remembered it, I suppose, so she put that on. Nothing more was said about St. Valentine just then, but when the last pink letter of his name had been eaten and the supper had been cleared away, suddenly, as the children sat by the fire, there was a loud rap at the door. "Who can that be?" said Katy. "Please see, Clover." So Clover opened the door. There stood Bridget, trying very hard not to laugh, and holding a letter in her hand. "It's a note has come for you, Miss Clover," she said. "For me?" cried Clover, much amazed. Then she shut the door and brought the note to the table. "How very funny," she exclaimed as she looked at the envelope, which was a green and white one. There was something hard inside. Clover broke the seal. Out tumbled a small green velvet pincushion made in the shape of a clover leaf, with a tiny stem of wire wound with green silk. Pinned to the cushion was a paper with these verses: "Some people love roses well, tulips gaily dressed. Some love violets blue and sweet, I love Clover best. Though she has a modest air, though no grace she boast, though no gardener call her fair, I love Clover most. Butterfly may pass her by, he is but a rover. I'm a faithful, loving bee, and I stick to Clover." This was the first Valentine Clover had ever had. She was perfectly enchanted. "Oh, who do you suppose sent it?" she cried. But before anybody could answer, there came another loud knock at the door, which made them all jump. Behold Bridget again, with a second letter. "It's for you, Miss Elsie, this time," she said with a grin. There was an instant rush from all the children, and the envelope was torn open in the twinkling of an eye. Inside was a little ivory seal with Elsie on it in Old English letters, and these rhymes: "I know a little girl, she is very dear to me. She is just as sweet as honey, when she chooses so to be, and her name begins with E and ends with E. She has brown hair which curls, and black eyes for to see, with teeth like tiny pearls, and dimples 1, 2, 3, and her name begins with E and ends with E. Her little feet run faster than other feet can flee. As she brushes quickly past her, voice hums like a bee, and her name begins with E and ends with E. Do you ask me why I love her? Then I shall answer thee, because I can't help loving. She is so sweet to me, this little girl whose name begins and ends with E." "It's just like a fairy story," said Elsie, whose eyes had grown as big as saucers from surprise while these verses were being read aloud by Cece. Another knock. This time there was a perfect handful of letters. Everybody had one. Katy, to her great surprise, had 2. "Why, what can this be?" she asked. But when she peeped into the second one, she saw Cousin Helen's handwriting, and she put it into her pocket till the Valentines should be read. Dory's was opened first. It had the picture of a pie at the top. I ought to explain that Dory had lately been having a siege with the dentist. Little Jack Horner sat in his corner, eating his Christmas pie, when a sudden grimace spread over his face and he began loudly to cry. His tender mamma heard the sound from afar and hastened to comfort her child. "What aileth my John?" she inquired in a tone which belied her question mild. "Oh, mother," he said, "every tooth in my head jumps and aches and is loose, oh my, and it hurts me to eat anything that is sweet, so what will become of my pie?" It were vain to describe how he roared and he cried and howled like a miniature tempest. Suffice it to say that the very next day he had all his teeth pulled by a dentist. This Valentine made the children laugh for a long time. Johnny's envelope held a paper doll named Red Riding Hood. These were the verses. "I send you my picture, dear Johnny, to show that I'm just as alive as you, and that you needn't cry over my fate any more as you used to do. The wolf didn't hurt me at all that day, for I kicked and fought and cried, till he dropped me out of his mouth and ran away in the woods to hide. And Grandma and I have lived ever since in the little brown house so small, and churned fresh butter and made cream cheeses, nor seen the wolf at all. So cry no more for fear I am eaten, the naughty wolf is shot, and if you will come to tea some evening, you shall see for yourself I'm not." Johnny was immensely pleased at this, for Red Riding Hood was a great favourite of hers. Philly had a bit of India rubber in his letter, which was written with very black ink on a big sheet of foolscap. "I was once a naughty man, and I hid beneath the bed to steal your India rubbers, but I chewed them up instead. Then you called out, 'Who is there?' I was thrown most in a fit, and I let the India rubbers fall, all but this little bit. I'm sorry for my naughty ways, and now to make amends, I send the chewed piece back again and beg we may be friends. From the robber." "Just listen to mine," said Cece, who had all along pretended to be as much surprised as anybody, and now behaved as if she could hardly wait until Philly's was finished. Then she read aloud. "To Cece, if I were a bird and you were a bird, what would we do? Why, you should be little and I would be big, and side by side on a cherry tree twig we'd kiss with our yellow bills and coo. That's what we would do. If I were a fish and you were a fish, what would we do? We would frolic and whisk our little tails, and play all sorts of tricks with the whales, and call on the oysters and order a stew. That's what we would do. If I were a bee and you were a bee, what would we do? We'd find a home in a breezy wood and store it with honey sweet and good. You should feed me and I would feed you. That's what we'll do. Valentine. I think that's the prettiest of all, said Clover. I don't, said Elsie. I think mine is the prettiest. Cece didn't have any seal in hers either. And she fondled the little seal which all this time she had held in her hand. Katy, you ought to have read yours first, because you were the oldest, said Clover. Mine isn't much, replied Katy, and she read, The rose is red, the violet blue, sugar is sweet, and so are you. What a mean Valentine, cried Elsie with flashing eyes. It's a great shame, Katy. You ought to have had the best of all. Katy could hardly keep herself from laughing. The fact was that the verses for the others had taken so long that no time had been left for writing a Valentine to herself. So thinking it would excite suspicion to have none, she had scribbled this old rhyme at the last moment. It isn't very nice, she said, trying to look as pensive as she could, but never mind. It's a shame, repeated Elsie, petting her very hard to make up for the injustice. Hasn't it been a funny evening? Said John, and Dory replied, Yes, we never had such good times before Katy was ill, did we? Katy heard this with a mingled feeling of pleasure and pain. I think the children do love me a little more of late, she said to herself, but oh, why couldn't I be good to them when I was well and strong? She didn't open Cousin Helen's letter until the rest were all gone to bed. I think somebody must have written and told her about the Valentine party, for instead of a note, there were these verses in Cousin Helen's own clear, pretty hand. It wasn't a Valentine because it was too solemn, as Katy explained to Clover next day. But, she added, it is a great deal beautifuler than any Valentine that ever was written. And Clover thought so too. These were the verses. In school. I used to go to a bright school, where youth and frolic taught in turn. But idle scholar that I was, I liked to play, I would not learn. So the great teacher did ordain that I should try the school of pain. One of the infant class I am, with little easy lessons set. In a great book the higher class have harder ones than I, and yet I find mine hard, and can't restrain my tears while studying thus with pain. There are 2 teachers in the school. One has a gentle voice and low, and smiles upon her scholars, as she softly passes to and fro. Her name is Love, 'tis very plain. She shuns the sharper teacher pain. Or so I sometimes think, at other times they meet and kiss, and look so strangely like, that I am puzzled to tell how it is, or whence the change which makes it vain to guess if it be love or pain. They tell me if I study well, and learn my lessons, I shall be moved upward to that higher class, where dear love teaches constantly. And I work hard in hopes to gain reward and get away from pain. Yet pain is sometimes kind and helps me on when I am very dull. I thank him often in my heart, but love is far more beautiful. Under her tender, gentle reign, I must learn faster than of pain. So I will do my very best, nor chide the clock, nor call it slow, that when the teacher calls me up to see if I am fit to go, I may to love's high class attain, and bid a sweet goodbye to pain. Chapter 11. A New Lesson to Learn. It was a long time before the children ceased to talk and laugh over that jolly evening. Dory declared he wished there could be a Valentine's Day every week. "Don't you think St. Valentine would be tired of writing verses?" asked Katy, but she too had enjoyed the frolic, and the bright recollection helped her along through the rest of the long, cold winter. Spring opened late that year, but the summer, when it came, was a warm one. Katy felt the heat very much. She could not change her seat and follow the breeze about from window to window as other people could. The long burning days left her weak and parched. She hung her head and seemed to wilt like the flowers in the garden beds. Indeed, she was worse off than they, for every evening Alexander gave them a watering with the hose, while nobody was able to bring a watering pot and pour out what she needed, a shower of cold, fresh air. It wasn't easy to be good-humoured under these circumstances, and one could hardly have blamed Katy if she had sometimes forgotten her resolutions and been cross and fretful. But she didn't, not very often. Now and then bad days came, when she was discouraged and forlorn. But Katy's long year of schooling had taught her self-control, and as a general thing, her discomforts were borne patiently. She could not help growing pale and thin, however, and Papa saw with concern that as the summer went on, she became too languid to read or study or sew, and just sat hour after hour with folded hands, gazing wistfully out of the window. He tried the experiment of taking her for a drive, but the motion of the carriage and being lifted in and out brought on so much pain that Katy begged that he would not ask her to go again. So there was nothing to be done but wait for cooler weather. The summer dragged on, and all who loved Katy rejoiced when it was over. When September came, with cool mornings and nights, and fresh breezes, smelling of pine woods and hilltops, all things seemed to revive, and Katy with them. She began to crochet and to read. After a while, she collected her books again and tried to study as Cousin Helen had advised. But so many idle weeks made it seem harder work than ever. One day, she asked Papa to let her take French lessons. "You see, I'm forgetting all I knew," she said, "and Clover is going to begin this term, and I don't like that she should get so far ahead of me. Don't you think Mr. Berger would be willing to come here, Papa? He does go to houses sometimes." "I think he would if we asked him," said Dr. Carr, pleased to see Katy waking up with something like life again. So the arrangement was made. Mr. Berger came twice every week and sat beside the big chair, correcting Katy's exercises and practicing her in the verbs and pronunciation. He was a lively little old Frenchman and knew how to make lesson time pleasant. "You take more pain than you used, mademoiselle," he said one day. "If you go on so, you shall be my best scholar. And if to hurt the back make you study, it would be well that some other of my young ladies shall do the same." Katy laughed, but in spite of Mr. Berger and his lessons, and in spite of her endeavours to keep cheerful and busy, this second winter was harder than the first. It is often so with sick people. There is a sort of excitement in being ill, which helps along just at the beginning, but as months go on, and everything grows an old story, and one day follows another day, all just alike, and all tiresome. Courage is apt to flag, and spirits to grow dull. Spring seemed a long, long way off whenever Katy thought about it. "I wish something would happen," she often said to herself. And something was about to happen, but she little guessed what it was going to be. "Katy," said Clover, coming in one day in November, "do you know where the camphor is? Aunt Izzy has got such a headache." "No," replied Katy, "I don't. Or, wait, Clover, it seems to me that Debbie came for it the other day. Perhaps if you look in her room you'll find it." "How very queer," she soliloquised when Clover was gone. "I never knew Aunt Izzy to have a headache before." "How is Aunt Izzy?" she asked when Papa came in at noon. "Well, I don't know. She has some fever and a bad pain in her head. I have told her that she had better lie still and not to try to get up this evening. Old Mary will come to undress you, Katy. You won't mind, will you, dear?" "No," said Katy reluctantly, but she did mind. Aunt Izzy had grown used to her and her ways. Nobody else suited her so well. "It seems so strange to have to explain just how every little thing is to be done," she remarked to Clover. It seemed stranger yet when the next day, and the next after that passed, and still no Aunt Izzy came near her. Blessings brighten as they take their flight. Katy began to appreciate, for the first time, how much she had learned to rely on her aunt. She missed her dreadfully. "When is Aunt Izzy going to get well?" she asked her father. "I want her so much." "We all want her," said Dr. Carr, who looked disturbed and anxious. "Is she very ill?" asked Katy, struck by the expression of his face. "Pretty ill, I'm afraid," he replied. "I'm going to get a regular nurse to take care of her." Aunt Izzy's attack proved to be typhoid fever. The doctor said that the house must be kept quiet, so John and Dory and Phil were sent over to Mrs. Hall's to stay. Elsie and Clover were to have gone too, but they begged so hard and made so many promises of good behaviour that finally Papa permitted them to remain. The dear little things stole about the house on tiptoe as quietly as mice, whispering to each other and waiting on Katy, who would have been lonely enough without them, for everybody else was absorbed in Aunt Izzy. It was a confused, melancholy time. The three girls didn't know much about sickness, but Papa's grave face and the hushed house weighed upon their spirits, and they missed the children very much. "Oh dear," sighed Elsie, "how I wish Aunt Izzy would hurry and get well." "We'll be very good to her when she does, won't we?" said Clover. "I never mean to leave my goloshes in the hat stand any more, because she doesn't like it. And I shall pick up the croquet balls and put them in the box every night." "Yes," added Elsie, "so will I when she gets well." It never occurred to either of them that perhaps Aunt Izzy might not get well. Little people are apt to feel as if grown folks are so strong and so big that nothing could possibly happen to them. Katy was more anxious. Still, she did not fairly realise the danger. So it came like a sudden and violent shock to her when one morning on waking up, she found old Mary crying quietly beside the bed with her apron at her eyes. Aunt Izzy had died in the night. All their kind, penitent thoughts of her, their resolutions to please, their plans for obeying her wishes and saving her trouble were too late. For the first time, the three girls sobbing in each other's arms realised what a good friend Aunt Izzy had been to them. Her worrying ways were all forgotten now. They could only remember the many kind things she had done for them since they were little children. How they wished that they had never teased her, never said sharp words about her to each other. What shall we do without Aunt Izzy? Thought Katy as she cried herself to sleep that night. And the question came into her mind again and again after the funeral was over and the little ones had come back from Mrs. Hall's and things began to go on in their usual manner. For several days she saw almost nothing of her father. Clover reported that he looked very tired and scarcely said a word. "Did Papa eat any dinner?" asked Katy one afternoon. "Not much. He said he wasn't hungry, and Mrs. Jackson's boy came for him before we were through." "Oh dear," sighed Katy. "I do hope he isn't going to be ill. How it rains. Clovey, I wish you'd run down and get out his slippers and put them by the fire to warm. Oh, and ask Debbie to make some cream toast for tea. Papa loves cream toast." After tea, Dr. Carr came upstairs to sit a while in Katy's room. He often did so, but this was the first time since Aunt Izzy's death. Katy studied his face anxiously. It seemed to her that it had grown older of late, and there was a sad look upon it which made her heart ache. She longed to do something for him, but all she could do was to poke the fire bright, and then to possess herself of his hand and stroke it gently with both hers. It wasn't much, to be sure, but I think Papa liked it. "What have you been doing about all day?" he asked. "Oh, nothing much," said Katy. "I studied my French lesson this morning, and after school Elsie and John brought in their patchwork, and we had a bee, that's all." "I've been thinking how we are going to manage about the housekeeping," said Dr. Carr. "Of course we shall have to get somebody to come and take charge, but it isn't easy to find just the right person. Mrs. Hall knows of a woman who might do, but she is out west just now, and it will be a week or two before we can hear from her. Do you think you can get on as you are for a few days?" "Oh, Papa," cried Katy in dismay. "Must we have anybody?" "Why, how do you suppose we were going to arrange it? Clover is much too young for a housekeeper, and besides, she is at school all day." "I don't know, I hadn't thought about it," said Katy in a perplexed tone. But she did think about it all that evening, and the first thing when she woke in the morning. "Papa," she said, the next time she got him to herself, "I've been thinking over what you said last night about getting somebody to keep the house, you know, and I wish you wouldn't. I wish you would let me try. Really and truly, I think I could manage." "But how?" asked Dr. Carr, much surprised. "I really don't see. If you were well and strong, perhaps, but even then You would be pretty young for such a charge, Katy." "I shall be 14 in 2 weeks," said Katy, drawing herself up in her chair as straight as she could. "And if I were well, Papa, I should be going to school, you know, and then of course I couldn't. No, I'll tell you my plan. I've been thinking about it all day. Debbie and Bridget have been with us so long, and they know all Aunt Izzy's ways, and they're such good women, that all they want is to just be told a little now and then. Now, why couldn't they come up to me when anything is wanted, just as well as to have me go down to them? Clover and old Mary will keep watch, you know, and see if anything is wrong. And you wouldn't mind if things were a little crooked at first, would you? Because, you know, I should be learning all the time. Do let me try. It will be so nice to have something to think about as I sit up here alone. So much better than having a stranger in the house who doesn't know the children or anything. I am sure it will make me happier. Please say yes, Papa. Please do." "It's too much for you, a great deal too much," replied Dr. Carr. But it was not easy to resist Katy's please, please, and after a while it ended with, "Well, darling, you may try, though I am doubtful as to the result of the experiment. I will tell Mrs. Hall to put off writing to Wisconsin for a month, and we will see." "Poor child, anything to take her thoughts off herself," he muttered as he walked downstairs. "She'll be glad enough to give the thing up by the end of a month." But Papa was mistaken. At the end of a month, Katy was eager to go on. So he said, very well, she might try till spring. It was not such hard work as it sounds. Katy had plenty of quiet thinking time for one thing. The children were at school all day, and few visitors came to interrupt her, so she could plan out her hours and keep to the plans. That is a great help to a housekeeper. Then Aunt Izzy's regular punctual ways were so well understood by the servants that the house seemed almost to keep itself. As Katy had said, all Debbie and Bridget needed was a little telling now and then. As soon as breakfast was over and the dishes were washed and put away, Debbie would tie on a clean apron and come upstairs for orders. At first Katy thought this great fun, but after ordering dinner a good many times, it began to grow tiresome. She never saw the dishes after they were cooked, and being inexperienced, it seemed impossible to think of things enough to make a variety. Let me see, there is roast beef, leg of mutton, boiled chicken, she would say, counting on her fingers. Debbie, you might roast the chickens. Dear, I wish somebody would invent a new animal. Where all the things to eat are gone to, I can't imagine. Then Katy would send for every recipe book in the house and pore over them by the hour till her appetite was as completely gone as if she had swallowed 20 dinners. Poor Debbie learned to dread these books. She would stand by the door with her pleasant red face drawn up into a pucker, while Katy read aloud some impossible-sounding rule. This looks as if it were delicious, Debbie. I wish you'd try it. Take a gallon of oysters, a pint of beef stock, 16 soda biscuits, the juice of 2 lemons, 4 cloves, a glass of white wine, a sprig of thyme, a sprig of bay, a sliced shallot. Please, Miss Katy, what's them? Oh, don't you know, Debbie? It must be something quite common, for it's in almost all the recipes. No, Miss Katy, I never heard tell of it before. Miss Carr never gave me no shell-outs at all." "Dear me, how provoking," Katy would cry, flapping over the leaves of her book. "Then we must try something else." Poor Debbie! If she hadn't loved Katy so dearly, I think her patience must have given way. But she bore her trials meekly, except for an occasional grumble when alone with Bridget. Dr. Carr had to eat a great many queer things in those days, but he didn't mind. And as for the children, they enjoyed it. Dinner time became quite exciting when nobody could tell exactly what any dish on the table was made of. Dory, who was a sort of Dr. Livingstone where strange articles of food were concerned, usually made the first experiment, and if he said that it was good, the rest followed suit. After a while, Katy grew wiser. She ceased teasing Debbie to try new things, and the Carr family went back to plain roast and boiled, much to the advantage of all concerned. But then another series of experiments began. Katy got hold of a book upon the stomach and was seized with a rage for wholesome food. She entreated Clover and the other children to give up sugar and butter and gravy and pudding sauce and buckwheat cakes and pies and almost everything else that they particularly liked. Boiled rice seemed to her the most sensible dessert, and she kept the family on it until finally John and Dory started a rebellion, and Dr. Carr was forced to interfere. "My dear, you are overdoing it sadly," he said, as Katy opened her book and prepared to explain her views. "I am glad to have the children eat simple food, but really, boiled rice 5 times in a week is too much." Katy sighed but submitted. Later, as the spring came on, she had a fit of over-anxiousness and was always sending Clover down to ask Debbie if her bread was not burning, or if she was sure that the pickles were not fermenting in their jars. She also fidgeted the children about wearing overshoes and keeping on their coats, and behaved altogether as if the cares of the world were on her shoulders. But all these were but the natural mistakes of a beginner. Katy was too much in earnest not to improve. Month by month, she learned how to manage a little better, and a little better still. Matters went on more smoothly. Her cares ceased to fret her. Dr. Carr, watching the increasing brightness of her face and manner, felt that the experiment was a success. Nothing more was said about somebody else, and Katy, sitting upstairs in her big chair, held the threads of the house firmly in her hands. Chapter 12. 2 years afterwards. It was a pleasant morning in early June. A warm wind was rustling the trees, which were covered thickly with half-opened leaves and looked like fountains of green spray thrown high into the air. Dr. Carr's front door stood wide open. Through the parlour window came the sound of piano practice, and on the steps, under the budding roses, sat a small figure busily sewing. This was Clover, little Clover still, though more than 2 years had passed since we last saw her, and she was now over 14. Clover was never intended to be tall. Her eyes were as blue and sweet as ever, and her apple-blossom cheeks as pink. But the brown pigtails were pinned up into a round knot, and the childish face had gained almost a womanly look. old Mary declared that Miss Clover was getting quite young ladyified, and Miss Clover was quite aware of the fact and mightily pleased with it. It delighted her to turn up her hair, and she was very particular about having her dresses made to come below the tops of her boots. She had also left off ruffles and wore narrow collars instead, and little cuffs with sleeve buttons to fasten them. These sleeve buttons, which were a present from Cousin Helen, Clover liked best of all her things. Papa said that he was sure she took them to bed with her, but of course that was only a joke, though she certainly was never seen without them in the daytime. She glanced frequently at these beloved buttons as she sat sewing, and every now and then laid down her work to twist them into a better position, or give them an affectionate pat with her forefinger. Pretty soon the side gate swung open, and Philly came round the corner of the house. He had grown into a big boy. All his pretty baby curls were cut off, and his frocks had given place to jackets and trousers. In his hand he held something, what Clover could not see. "What's that?" she said as he reached the steps. "I'm going upstairs to ask Katy if these are ripe," replied Phil, exhibiting some currants faintly streaked with red. "Why, of course they're not ripe," said Clover, putting one into her mouth. "Can't you tell by the taste? They're as green as can be." "I don't care. If Katy says they're ripe, I shall eat them," answered Phil defiantly, marching into the house. "What did Philly want?" asked Elsie, opening the parlour door as Phil went upstairs. "Only to know if the currants are ripe enough to eat." "How particular he always is about asking now," said Elsie. "He's afraid of another dose of salts." "I should think he would be," replied Clover, laughing. Johnny says she was never so scared in her life as when Papa called them and they looked up and saw him standing there with the bottle in one hand and a spoon in the other. "Yes," went on Elsie, "and you know Dory held his in his mouth for ever so long and then went around the corner of the house and spat it out. Papa said he had a good mind to make him take another spoonful, but he remembered that after all, Dory had the bad taste a great deal longer than the others, so he didn't. I think it was an awful punishment, don't you?" "Yes, but it was a good one, for none of them have ever touched the green gooseberries since. Have you got through practising? It doesn't seem like an hour yet." "Oh, it isn't. It's only 25 minutes, but Katy told me not to sit more than half an hour at a time without getting up and running round to rest. I'm going to walk twice down to the gate and twice back. I promised her I would." And Elsie set off. "Why, what is Bridget doing in Papa's room?" she asked as she came back the second time. "She's flapping things out of the window. Are the servants up there? I thought they were cleaning the dining room." "They're doing both. Katy said it was such a good chance, having Papa away, that she would have both the carpets taken up at once. There isn't going to be any dinner today, only just bread and butter and milk, and cold ham up in Katy's room, because Debbie is helping too, so as to get through and save Papa all the fuss. And see," exhibiting her sewing, "Katy's making a new cover for Papa's pin cushion, and I'm hemming the ruffle to go round it." "How nicely you hem," said Elsie. "I wish I had something for Papa's room too. There's my washstand mats, but the one for the soap dish isn't finished. Do you suppose if Katy would excuse me from the rest of my practising, I could get it done? I've a great mind to go and ask her." "There's her bell," said Clover, as a little tinkle sounded upstairs. "I'll ask her if you like." "No, let me go. I'll see what she wants." But Clover was already halfway across the hall, and the two girls ran up side by side. There was often a little strife between them as to which should answer Katy's bell. Both liked to wait on her so much. Katy came to meet them as they entered. Not on her feet. That, alas, was still only a far-off possibility, but in a chair with large wheels, with which she was rolling herself across the room. This chair was a great comfort to her. Sitting in it, she could get to her closet and her bureau drawers, and help herself to what she wanted without troubling anybody. It was only lately that she had been able to use it. Dr. Carr considered her doing so as a hopeful sign, but he had never told Katy this. She had grown accustomed to her invalid life at last, and was cheerful in it, and he thought it unwise to make her restless by exciting hopes which might after all end in fresh disappointment. She met the girls with a bright smile as they came in. "Oh, Clovy, it was you I rang for. I am troubled for fear Bridget will meddle with the things on Papa's table. You know he likes them to be left just so. Will you please go and remind her that she is not to touch them at all? After the carpet is put down, I want you to dust the table, so as to be sure that everything is put back in the same place. Will you?" "Of course I will," said Clover, who was a born housewife and dearly loved to act as Katy's Prime Minister. "Shan't I fetch you the pincushion too while I'm there?" "Oh yes, please do. I want to measure." "Katy," said Elsie, "those mats of mine are almost done, and I would like to finish them and put them on Papa's washstand before he comes back. May I stop practicing now and bring my crochet up here instead?" "Will there be plenty of time to learn the new exercise before Miss Phillips comes if you do?" "I think so, plenty. She doesn't come till Friday, you know." "Well then, it seems to me that you might just as well as not. And Elsie dear, run into Papa's room first, and bring me the drawer out of his table. I want to put that in order myself." Elsie went cheerfully. She laid the drawer across Katy's lap, and Katy began to dust and arrange the contents. Pretty soon Clover joined them. "Here's the cushion," she said. "Now we'll have a nice quiet time all by ourselves. I like this sort of a day, when nobody comes in to interrupt us." Somebody tapped at the door as she spoke. Katy called out, "Come in," and in marched a tall, broad-shouldered lad with a solemn, sensible face and a little clock carried carefully in both his hands. This was Dory. He had grown and improved very much since we saw him last, and is turning out clever in several ways. Among the rest, he has developed a strong turn for mechanics. "Here's your clock, Katy," he said. "I've got it mended so that it strikes all right. Only you must be careful not to hit the striker when you start the pendulum." "Have you really?" said Katy. "Why, Dory, you're a genius. I'm ever so much obliged." "It's 4 minutes to 11 now," went on Dory, "so it'll strike pretty soon. I think I'd better stay and hear it, so as to be sure that it is right. That is," he added politely, "unless you're busy and would rather not." "I'm never too busy to want you, old fellow," said Katy. "Here, this drawer is arranged now. Won't you carry it into Papa's room and put it back into the table? Your hands are stronger than Elsie's." Dory looked gratified. When he came back, the clock was just beginning to strike. "There," he exclaimed, "that's splendid, isn't it?" But alas, the clock did not stop at 11. It went on. 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. "Dear me," said Clover, "what does all this mean? It must be the day after tomorrow at least." Dory stared with open mouth at the clock, which was still striking as though it would split its sides. Elsie, screaming with laughter, kept count. 31, oh Dory, 32, 33, 34. "You've bewitched it, Dory," said Katy, as much entertained as the rest. Then they all began counting. Dory seized the clock, shook it, slapped it, turned it upside down, but still the sharp vibrating sounds continued, as if the clock, having got its own way for once, meant to go on till it was tired out. At last, at the 130th stroke, it suddenly ceased, and Dory, with a red, amazed countenance, faced the laughing company. "It's very queer," he said, "but I'm sure it's not because of anything I did. I can mend it, though, if you'll let me try again. May I, Katy? I'll promise not to hurt it." For a moment Katy hesitated. Clover pulled her sleeve and whispered, "Don't." Then, seeing the mortification on Dory's face, she made up her mind. "Yes, take it, Dory. I'm sure you'll be careful. But if I were you, I'd carry it down to Wetherell's first of all, and talk it over with them. Together you could hit on just the right thing. Don't you think so?" "Perhaps," said Dory. "Yes, I think I will." Then he departed with the clock under his arm, while Clover called after him teasingly, "Lunch at 132 o'clock, don't forget." "No, I won't," said Dory. 2 years before, he would not have borne to be laughed at so good-naturedly. "How could you let him take your clock again?" said Clover, as soon as the door was shut. "He'll spoil it, and you think so much of it." "I thought he would feel mortified if I didn't let him try," replied Katy quietly. "I don't believe he'll hurt it. Wetherell's man likes Dory, and he'll show him what to do." "You were very good to do it," responded Clover, "but if it had been mine, I don't think I could." Just then the door flew open and Johnny rushed in, 2 years taller, but otherwise looking exactly as she used to do. "Oh, Katy," she gasped, "won't you please tell Philly not to wash the chickens in the rainwater tub? He's put in every one of Speckles, and he's just beginning on Dame Durden's. I'm afraid one little yellow one is dead already." "Why, he mustn't, of course he mustn't," said Katy. "Who made him think of such a thing? He says they're dirty because they've just come out of eggshells, and he insists that the yellow on them is yolk of egg. I told him it wasn't, but he wouldn't listen to me." And Johnny wrung her hands. "Clover," cried Katy, "won't you run down and ask Philly to come up to me? Speak pleasantly, you know." "I spoke pleasantly, really pleasantly, but it wasn't any use," said Johnny, on whom the wrongs of the chicks had evidently made a deep impression. "What a mischief Philly's going to be," said Elsie. "Papa says his name ought to be Pickle." "Pickles turn out very nice sometimes, you know," replied Katy, laughing. Pretty soon Philly came up, escorted by Clover. He looked a little defiant, but Katy understood how to manage him. She lifted him into her lap, which, big boy as he was, he liked extremely, and talked to him so affectionately about the poor little shivering chicks that his heart was quite melted. "I didn't mean to hurt them, really and truly," he said, "but they were all dirty and yellow, with egg, you know, and I thought you'd like me to clean them up. But that wasn't egg, Philly. It was dear little clean feathers, like a canary's bird's wings. Was it? Yes, and now the chickens are as cold and forlorn as you would feel if you tumbled into a pond and nobody gave you any dry clothes. Don't you think you ought to go and warm them? How? Well, in your hands very gently, and then I would let them run round in the sun. I will, said Philly, getting down from her lap. Only kiss me first, because I didn't mean to, you know. Philly was very fond of Katy. Miss Pettingill said it was wonderful to see how that little child let himself be managed. But I think the secret was that Katy didn't manage, but tried to be always kind and loving and considerate of Phil's feelings. Before the echo of Phil's boots had fairly died away on the old stairs, Mary put her head into the door. There was a distressed expression on her face. "Miss Katy," she said, "I wish you'd speak to Alexander about putting the woodshed in order. I don't think you know how bad it looks." "I don't suppose I do," said Katy, smiling, and then sighing. She had never seen the woodshed since the day of her fall from the swing. "Never mind, Mary. I'll talk to Alexander about it, and he shall make it all nice." Mary trotted downstairs satisfied, but in the course of a few minutes she was up again. "There's a man come with a box of soap, Miss Katy, and here's the bill. He says it's resated." It took Katy a little time to find her purse, and then she wanted her pencil and account book, and Elsie had to move from her seat at the table. "Oh dear," she said, "I wish people wouldn't keep coming and interrupting us. Who'll be next, I wonder?" She was not left to wonder long. Almost as she spoke, there was another knock at the door. "Come in," said Katy, rather wearily. The door opened. "Shall I?" said a voice. There was a rustle of skirts, a clatter of boot heels, and Imogen Clark swept into the room. Katy could not think who it was at first. She had not seen Imogen for almost 2 years. "I found the front door open," exclaimed Imogen in her high-pitched voice, "and as nobody seemed to hear when I rang the bell, I ventured to come right upstairs. I hope I'm not interrupting anything private." "Not at all," said Katy politely. "Elsie dear, move up that low chair, please. Do sit down, Imogen. I'm sorry nobody answered your ring, but the servants are house cleaning today, and I suppose they didn't hear." So Imogen sat down and began to rattle on in her usual manner, while Elsie, from behind Katy's chair, took a wide-awake survey of her dress. It was of cheap material, but very gorgeously made and trimmed, with flounces and puffs, and Imogen wore a jet necklace and long black earrings, which jingled and clicked when she waved her head about. She still had the little round curls stuck onto her cheeks, and Elsie wondered anew what kept them in their places. By and by, the object of Imogen's visit came out. She had called to say goodbye. The Clark family were all going back to Jacksonville to live. "Did you ever see the brigand again?" asked Clover, who had never forgotten that eventful tale told in the parlour. "Yes," replied Imogen, "several times, and I get letters from him quite often. He writes beautiful letters. I wish I had one with me, so that I could read you a little bit. You would enjoy it, I know. Let me see, perhaps I have." And she put her hand into her pocket. Sure enough, there was a letter. Clover couldn't help suspecting that Imogen knew it all the time. The brigand seemed to write a bold, black hand, and his notepaper and envelope were just like anybody else's. But perhaps his band had surprised a peddler with a box of stationery. "Let me see," said Imogen, running her eye down the page. "Adored Imogen. That wouldn't interest you. Oh, here's something. I took dinner at the Rock House on Christmas. It was lonesome without you. I had roast turkey, roast goose, roast beef, mince pie, plum pudding, and nuts and raisins. A pretty good dinner, was it not? But nothing tastes first rate when friends are away." Katy and Clover stared, as well they might. Such language from a brigand. "John Billings has bought a new horse," continued Imogen. I don't think there is anything else you'd care about. Oh yes, just here at the end is some poetry. "Come, little dove, with azure wing, and brood upon my breast." That's sweet, isn't it? "Hasn't he reformed?" said Clover. "He writes as if he had." "Reformed?" cried Imogen, with a toss of the jingling earrings. "He was always just as good as he could be." There was nothing to be said in reply to this. Katy felt her lips twitch, and for fear that she should be rude and laugh out, she began to talk as fast as she could about something else. All the time, she found herself taking measure of Imogen and thinking, "Did I ever really like her? How queer! Oh, what a wise man Papa is." Imogen stayed half an hour. Then she took her leave. "She never asked how you were," cried Elsie indignantly. "I noticed, and she didn't, not once." "Oh well, I suppose she forgot. We were talking about her, not about me," replied Katy. The little group settled down again to their work. This time half an hour went by without any more interruptions. Then the doorbell rang, and Bridget, with a disturbed face, came upstairs. "Miss Katy," she said, "it's old Mrs. Worrett, and I reckon she's come to spend the day, for she's brought her bag. Whatever shall I tell her?" Katy looked dismayed. "Oh dear," she said, "how unlucky. What can we do?" Mrs. Worrett was an old friend of Aunt Izzie's, who lived in the country about 6 miles from Burnett, and was in the habit of coming to Dr. Carr's for lunch on days when shopping or other business brought her into town. This did not occur often, and as it happened, Katy had never had to entertain her before. "Tell her you're busy and can't see her," suggested Bridget. "There's no dinner nor nothing, you know." The Katy of 2 years ago would probably have jumped at this idea, but the Katy of today was more considerate. "No," she said, "I don't like to do that. We must just make the best of it, Bridget. Run down, Clover dear, that's a good girl, and tell Mrs. Worrett that the dining room is all in confusion, but that we're going to have lunch here, and after she's rested, I should be glad to have her come up. And oh, Clovey, give her a fan the first thing. She'll be so hot. Bridget, you can bring up the luncheon just the same. Only take out some canned peaches by way of a dessert, and make Mrs. Worrett a cup of tea. She drinks tea always, I believe. I can't bear to send the poor old lady away when she has come so far," she explained to Elsie after the others were gone. "Pull the rocking chair a little this way, Elsie, and, oh, push all those little chairs back against the wall. Mrs. Worrett broke down in one the last time she was here. Don't you recollect?" It took some time to cool Mrs. Worrett off, so nearly 20 minutes passed before a heavy creaking step on the stairs announced that the guest was on her way up. Mrs. Worrett was the most enormously fat person ever seen. Nobody dared to guess how much she weighed, but she looked as if she might be 1,000 pounds. Her face was extremely red. In the coldest weather she appeared hot, and on a mild day she seemed absolutely ready to melt. Her bonnet strings were flying loose as she came in, and she fanned herself all the way across the room. "Well, my dear," she said as she plumped herself into the rocking chair, "and how do you do?" "Very well, thank you," replied Katy, thinking that she never saw Mrs. Worrett look half so fat before, and wondering how she was to entertain her. "And how's your papa?" inquired Mrs. Worrett. Katy answered politely, and then asked after Mrs. Worrett's own health. "Well, I'm so's to be round," was the reply, which had the effect of sending Elsie off into a fit of convulsive laughter behind Katy's chair. "I had business at the bank," continued the visitor, "and I thought while I was about it, I'd step up to Miss Pettingill's and see if I couldn't get her to come and let out my black silk. It was made some time ago, and I seem to have got stouter since then, for I can't make the hooks and eyes meet at all. But when I got there she was out, so I'd my walk for nothing. Do you know where she's sewing now?" "No," said Katy, feeling her chair shake and keeping her own countenance with difficulty. "She was here for 3 days last week to make Johnny a school dress, but I haven't heard anything about her since. Elsie, will you run downstairs and ask Bridget to bring a glass of iced water for Mrs. Worrett? She looks warm after her walk." Elsie, dreadfully ashamed, made a bolt from the room and hid herself in the hall closet to have her laugh out. She came back after a while with a perfectly straight face. Luncheon was brought up. Mrs. Worrett made a good meal and seemed to enjoy everything. She was so comfortable that she never stirred till 4 o'clock. Oh, how long that afternoon did seem to the poor girls, sitting there and trying to think of something to say to their visitor. At last Mrs. Worrett got out of her chair and prepared to depart. "Well," she said, tying her bonnet strings, "I've had a good rest and feel all the better for it. Aren't one of you young folks coming out to see me one of these days? I'd like to have you first rate, if you will. It is not every girl would know how to take care of a fat old woman and make her feel at home, as you have made me, Katy. I wish your aunt could see you all as you are now. Should be very pleased, I know that." Somehow this sentence rang pleasantly in Katy's ears. "Ah, don't laugh at her," she said later in the evening when the children, after their tea in the clean, fresh-smelling dining room, were come up to sit with her, and Cece, in her pretty pink lawn and white shawl, had dropped in to spend an hour or two. "She's a really kind old woman, and I don't like to hear you. It isn't her fault that she's fat, and Aunt Izzy was fond of her, you know. It is doing something for her when we can show a little attention to one of her friends. I was sorry when she came, but now it's over, I'm glad. It feels so nice when it stops aching," quoted Elsie mischievously, while Cece whispered to Clover, "Isn't Katy sweet?" "Isn't she?" replied Clover. "I wish I was half so good. Sometimes I think I shall really be sorry if she ever gets well. She's such a dear old darling to us all, sitting there in her chair, that it wouldn't seem so nice to have her anywhere else. But then I know it's horrid in me, and I don't believe she'd be different or grow horrid, like some of the girls, even if she were well." "Of course she wouldn't," replied Cece. Chapter 13. At last. It was about 6 weeks after this that one day Clover and Elsie were busy downstairs. They were startled by the sound of Katy's bell ringing in a sudden and agitated manner. Both ran up 2 steps at a time to see what was wanted. Katy sat in her chair, looking very much flushed and excited. "Oh, girls," she exclaimed, "what do you think? I stood up." "What?" cried Clover and Elsie. "I really did. I stood up on my feet by myself." The others were too much astonished to speak, so Katy went on explaining. "It was all at once, you see. Suddenly, I had the feeling that if I tried, I could. And almost before I thought, I did try. And there I was, up and out of the chair. Only I kept hold of the arm all the time. I don't know how I got back. I was so frightened. Oh, girls." And Katy buried her face in her hands. "Do you think I shall ever be able to do it again?" she asked, looking up with wet eyes. "Why, of course you will," said Clover, while Elsie danced about, crying out anxiously, "Be careful, oh, do be careful." Katy tried, but the spring was gone. She could not move out of the chair at all. She began to wonder if she had dreamed the whole thing. But next day, when Clover happened to be in the room, she heard a sudden exclamation, and turning, there stood Katy, absolutely on her feet. "Papa, Papa!" shrieked Clover, rushing downstairs. "Dory, John, Elsie, come and see." Papa was out, but all the rest crowded up at once. This time Katy found no trouble in doing it again. It seemed as if her will had been asleep, and now that it had waked up, the limbs recognised its orders and obeyed them. When Papa came in, he was as much excited as any of the children. He walked round and round the chair, questioning Katy and making her stand up and sit down. "Am I really going to get well?" she asked, almost in a whisper. "Yes, my love, I think you are," replied Dr. Carr, seizing Phil and giving him a toss into the air. None of the children had ever before seen Papa behave so like a boy. But pretty soon, noticing Katy's burning cheeks and excited eyes, he calmed himself, sent the others all away, and sat down to soothe and quiet her with gentle words. "I think it is coming, my darling," he said, "but it will take time, and you must have a great deal of patience. After being such a good child all these years, I'm sure you won't fail now. Remember, any imprudence will put you back. You must be content to gain very little at a time. There is no royal road to walking any more than there is to learning. Every baby finds that out." "Oh, Papa," said Katy, "it's no matter if it takes a year, if only I get well at last." How happy she was that night, too happy to sleep. Papa noticed the dark circles under her eyes in the morning and shook his head. "You must be careful," he told her, "or you'll be laid up again. A course of fever would put you back for years." Katy knew Papa was right, and she was careful, though it was by no means easy to be so with that new life tingling in every limb. Her progress was slow, as Dr. Carr had predicted. At first she only stood on her feet a few seconds, then a minute, then 5 minutes, holding tightly all the while by the chair. Next, she ventured to let go of the chair and stand alone. After that, she began to walk a step at a time, pushing a chair before her as children do when they are learning the use of their feet. Clover and Elsie hovered about her as she moved, like anxious mothers. It was droll and a little pitiful to see tall Katy with her feeble, unsteady progress, and the active figures of the little sisters following her protectingly. But Katy did not consider it either droll or pitiful. To her it was simply delightful, the most delightful thing possible. No baby of a year old was ever prouder of his first steps than she. Gradually she grew adventurous and ventured on a bolder flight. Clover, running upstairs one day to her own room, stood transfixed at the sight of Katy, sitting there flushed, panting, but enjoying the surprise she caused. "You see," she explained in an apologising tone, "I was seized with a desire to explore. It is such a time since I saw any room but my own. But oh dear, how long that hall is! I hadn't forgotten it could be so long. I shall have to take a good rest before I go back." Katy did take a good rest, but she was very tired next day. The experiment, however, did no harm. In the course of 2 or 3 weeks, she was able to walk all over the second story. This was a great enjoyment. It was like reading an interesting book to see all the new things and the little changes. She was forever wondering over something. "Why, Dory," she would say, "what a pretty bookshelf. When did you get it?" "That old thing? Why, I've had it 2 years. Didn't I ever tell you about it?" "Perhaps you did," Katy would reply, "but you see, I never saw it before, so it made no impression." By the end of August, she was grown so strong that she began to talk about going downstairs. But Papa said, "Wait. It will tire you much more than walking about on a level," he explained. "You had better put it off a little while, till you are quite sure of your feet." "I think so too," said Clover. "And besides, I want to have the house all put in order and made nice before your sharp eyes see it." "Oh, I'll tell you. Such a beautiful idea has come into my head. You shall fix a day to come down, Katy, and we'll be all ready for you and have a celebration among ourselves. That would be just lovely. How soon may she, Papa?" "Well, in 10 days, I should say, it might be safe." 10 days. That would bring it to the 7th of September, won't it?" said Katy. "Then, Papa, if I may, I'll come down for the first time on the 8th. It was Mamma's birthday, you know," she added in a lower voice. So it was settled. "How delicious!" cried Clover, skipping about and clapping her hands. "I never did hear of anything so perfectly lovely. Papa, when are you coming downstairs? I want to speak to you dreadfully." "Just at once, rather than have my coat-tails pulled off," answered Dr. Carr, laughing, and they went away together. Katy sat looking out of the window in a peaceful, happy mood. "Oh," she thought, "can it really be? Is school going to let out just as Cousin Helen's hymn said? Am I going to bid a sweet goodbye to pain? But there was love in the pain. I see it now. How good the dear teacher has been to me." Clover seemed to be very busy all the rest of that week. She was having windows washed, she said, but this explanation hardly accounted for her long absences, and the mysterious exultation on her face, not to mention certain sounds of hammering and sawing which came from downstairs. The other children had evidently been warned to say nothing, for once or twice Philly broke out with, "Oh, Katy," and then hushed himself up, saying, "I almost forgot." Katy grew very curious, but she saw that the secret, whatever it was, gave immense satisfaction to everybody except herself. So though she longed to know, she concluded not to spoil the fun by asking any questions. At last it wanted but a day of the important occasion. "See," said Katy as Clover came into the room a little before tea time. "Miss Pettingill has brought home my new dress. I'm going to wear it for the first time to go downstairs in." "How pretty," said Clover, examining the dress, which was a soft dove-coloured cashmere, trimmed with ribbon of the same shade. "But Katy, I came up to shut your door. Bridget's going to sweep the hall, and I don't want the dust to fly in, because your room was brushed this morning, you know." "What a queer time to sweep a hall," said Katy wonderingly. "Why don't you make her wait till morning?" "Oh, she can't. There will be other things for her to do tomorrow. It's a great deal more convenient that she should do it now. Don't worry, Katy darling, but just keep your door shut. You will, won't you? Promise me." "Very well," said Katy, more and more amazed, but yielding to Clover's eagerness. "I'll keep it shut." Her curiosity was excited. She took a book and tried to read, but the letters danced up and down before her eyes, and she couldn't help listening. Bridget was making a most ostentatious noise with her broom, but through it all Katy seemed to hear other sounds: feet on the stairs, doors opening and shutting, once a stifled giggle. How queer it all was. "Never mind," she said resolutely, stopping her ears. "I shall know all about it tomorrow." Tomorrow dawned fresh and fair, the very ideal of a September day. "Katy," said Clover as she came in from the garden with her hands full of flowers, "that dress of yours is sweet. You never looked so nice before in your life." And she stuck a beautiful carnation pink under Katy's breast pin and fastened another in her hair. "There," she said. "Now you're adorned. Papa is coming up in a few minutes to take you down." Just then Elsie and Johnny came in. They had on their best frocks. So had Clover. It was evidently a festival day to all the house. Cece followed, invited over for the special purpose of seeing Katy walk downstairs. She too had on a new frock. "How fine we are," said Clover as she remarked this magnificence. "Turn around, Cece. I do declare you are getting awfully grown up, Miss Hall." "None of us will ever be so grown up as Katy," said Cece, laughing. And now Papa appeared. Very slowly they all went downstairs, Katy leaning on Papa, with Dory on her other side and the girls behind, while Philly clattered ahead. And there were Debbie and Bridget and Alexander peeping out of the kitchen door to watch her, and dear old Mary, with her apron at her eyes, crying for joy. "Oh, the front door is open," said Katy in a delighted tone. "How nice, and what a pretty oilcloth. That's new since I was here." "Don't stop to look at that," cried Philly, who seemed in a great hurry about something. "It isn't new. It's been there ever and ever so long. Come into the parlour instead." "Yes," said Papa. "Dinner isn't quite ready yet. You'll have time to rest a little after your walk downstairs. You have borne it admirably, Katy. Are you very tired?" "Not a bit," replied Katy cheerfully. "I could do it alone, I think. Oh, the bookcase door has been mended. How nice it looks." "Don't wait, oh, don't wait," repeated Phil in an agony of impatience. So they moved on. Papa opened the parlour door. Katy took one step into the room, then stopped. The colour flashed over her face, and she held by the doorknob to support herself. What was it that she saw? Not merely the room itself, with its fresh muslin curtains and vases of flowers, nor even the wide, beautiful window which had been cut towards the sun, or the inviting little couch and table which stood there, evidently for her. No, there was something else. The sofa was pulled out, and there upon it, supported by pillows, her bright eyes turned to the door, lay Cousin Helen. When she saw Katy, she held out her arms. Clover and Cece agreed afterwards that they never were so frightened in their lives as at this moment, for Katy, forgetting her weakness, let go of her papa's arm and absolutely ran towards the sofa. "Oh, Cousin Helen, dear, dear Cousin Helen," she cried. Then she tumbled down by the sofa. Somehow the two pairs of arms and the two faces met, and for a moment or two not a word more was heard from anybody. "Isn't it a nice surprise?" shouted Philly, turning a somersault by way of relieving his feelings, while John and Dory executed a sort of war dance round the sofa. Phil's voice seemed to break the spell of silence, and a perfect hubbub of questions and exclamations began. It appeared that this happy thought of getting Cousin Helen to the celebration was Clover's. She it was who had proposed it to Papa and made all the arrangements. She had set Bridget to sweep the hall on purpose, that Katy might not hear the noise of the arrival. "Cousin Helen's going to stay 3 weeks this time. Isn't that nice?" said Elsie, while Clover anxiously questioned, "Are you sure that you didn't suspect? Not one bit, not the least tiny weeny mite." "No indeed, not the least. How could I suspect anything so perfectly delightful?" And Katy gave Cousin Helen another rapturous kiss. Such a short day as that seemed. There was so much to see, to ask about, to talk over, that the hours flew, and evening dropped upon them, all like another great surprise. Cousin Helen was perhaps the happiest of the party. Besides the pleasure of knowing Katy to be almost well again, she had the additional enjoyment of seeing for herself how many changes for the better had taken place during the 4 years among the little cousins she loved so much. It was very interesting to watch them all. Elsie and Dory seemed to her the most improved of the family. Elsie had quite lost her plaintive look and little injured tone, and was as bright and beaming a maiden of 12 as anybody could wish to see. Dory's moody face had grown open and sensible, and his manners were good-humoured and obliging. He was still a sober boy and not especially quick in catching an idea, but he promised to turn out a valuable man. And to him, as to all the other children, Katy was evidently the centre and the sun. They all revolved about her and trusted her for everything. Cousin Helen looked on as Phil came in crying after a hard tumble and was consoled, as Johnny whispered an important secret and Elsie begged for help in her work. She saw Katy meet them all pleasantly and sweetly, without a bit of the dictatorial elder sister in her manner, and with none of her old impetuous tone. And best of all, she saw the change in Katy's own face, the gentle expression of her eyes, the womanly look, the pleasant voice, the politeness, the tact in advising the others, without seeming to advise. "Dear Katy," she said a day or two after her arrival, "this visit is a great pleasure to me. You can't think how great. It is such a contrast to the last I made, when you were so sick, and everybody so sad. Do you remember?" "Indeed I do. And how good you were, and how you helped me. I shall never forget that. I'm glad, but what I could do was very little. You have been learning by yourself all this time. And Katy, darling, I want to tell you how pleased I am to see how bravely you have worked your way up. I can perceive it in everything, in Papa, in the children, in yourself. You have won the place which you recollect I once told you an invalid should try to gain, of being to everybody the heart of the house. Oh, Cousin Helen, don't, said Katy, her eyes filling with sudden tears. I haven't been brave. You can't think how badly I sometimes have behaved, how cross and ungrateful I am, and how stupid and slow. Every day I see things which ought to be done, and I don't do them. It's too delightful to have you praise me, but you mustn't. I don't deserve it. But although she said she didn't deserve it, I think that Katy did.